When are the reviews due?
Friday.
Right.
How many have you done?
Me
You did one and two.
Alright, how many slides do you have? We are alive.
Okay.
There's only
Are you guys? We are live online, so
No swearing.
quiet and focus. Keep it clean.
Wait, so I can't leave the room now? Oh, this sucks.
Not very nice.
I mean, you can leave.
Yeah.
Stay out.
No, cause, yeah, never mind. I don't know.
All right. Here we go. Welcome everyone to this year's senior thesis presentations. I'm just going to say a few really short things, which is all 7 of our seniors this year have worked really hard researching, organizing, writing research papers, and then creating this multimedia presentation that you're about to see. You can see behind me the schedule. Ulyses is going to go today, and then we'll have 2 students per day, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Please join us to hear about the topics that they've spent so much time researching. Ulyses will be presenting on the history of car design.
From the very invention of motorized vehicles, from the Model T to now, there have been many advancements in automobiles. Not only have the engines changed, but there's been a huge change to the exteriors. There have been many top designers that have been behind all of it, but not only was based on his thoughts, but was also going on around the world. World War II was one of the biggest turning points for cars. Many things have changed over the years, from 1893 to our modern cars today. From the very first cars, we started just from taking horse-drawn carriages and just taking out the horse. They didn't focus on every little detail, they just wanted to give people another way of transportation. They would use horse-drawn carriages at the very first car, and like I said, just pretty much just took the horse out. They'd work on something that they would work off of something that they already had. Designers took the very first steam engines and had to find a way to build around them, to fit them into the frame of the design. But it all really started from horse carriages. And the very first mass-produced car was a Ford Model T. It was actually considered also, what was also known as a tin diesel or the flivver. They wanted to make something that was cheap, durable, versatile, and didn't need much maintenance. They wanted to give people a variety of options as their first car, so they provided with many different options, many different models. The several body styles available were a 5-seat touring car, 2-seat runabout, and also a 7-seat town car. They wanted to keep cars as cheap as they could, because at the time working on steel was hard for them and was expensive. And with the limited technology that they had at the time, they couldn't do much. World War II was one of the biggest turning points in car designs. It affected many car manufacturers, many car companies, and they had to switch to other designs. World War II had one of the biggest influences, and it was a big influence on the next step. From the beginning of the war, companies had to make the big switch to focus on producing things for the war. They had to produce anything from the war, like tin hats, fighter planes, and tanks. After everything was over, for a long time to get back into producing the cars and giving people something new. So the simplest and quickest way for companies did that was to reintroduce models built in the late 1930s. Companies looked for ways to get back into it. So they reverted back to popular models made before the war to give them a push back into it. And the outcomes of the war, why this also became one of the biggest turning points was because many designs came from this point. This had meant an effect on many people, and they wanted to incorporate the designs from the war. So designers took looks from the military vehicles, including, for example, the war Jeep. This took the straight lines, higher hoods, and steel wheels. They wanted to give people a design that they knew. We want the car to feel like that, powerful and speedy. After the war, they started to focus on more of the exterior detail of the car. They wanted to give people something new. During the war, companies wanted to work up a big front end and an egg shape, monocle type. For war designers, they really didn't care if it looked nice or not, but aimed for more of a massive look to them. The design that they were going for was mainly the monocle shape, or often called bathtubs or soap bars. The design resembled a single bulbous egg that hung over the wheels, covering them just like some of the other arts in that time period. There have been many design changes throughout the years, but those designs wouldn't have happened without the great designers behind it all. One of the greatest designers, Harley Earl, was one of the many great. He had his own view of cars and had his own personal design, unlike others. He was one of the most gifted designers General Motors had introduced to the people. He had to work off something that they already had, and he was able to adapt to the new art and color that GM had introduced. His thoughts on the car, were different. How different was from, he was unique in his own way, taking designs from other things, such as a P-38 Lockheed fighter plane. He was inspired by this, and he was fascinated by this fighter plane. We absorbed all the details of its fine lines, every facet of the twin tails and boom stretching out behind the engine, and close was recorded immensely. Harley looked at planes different from others, becoming one of the greatest designs. Just something about the twin booms and twin tails, or the fishtail, as they called it, captured his attention. Earl wanted to add as much detail to the fighter plane into his design for the car. He wanted to include the front view of the plane, as well as the twin tails and fins at the back. Harley Earl had a big effect on the designs for cars for many more years after. General Motors was also one of the top companies. They offered 75 body styles and 450 trim combinations. They wanted to give people the notion to choose from, which they gave plenty. They offered many different styles. There was also the Wildcat 3 show car, which had no fender line beneath the hood or trunk. They integrated it and made the car into a more upright and close shape. They started experimenting with new inventions, which helped them for greater designs. And another great designer was Virgin Exner. Virgin Exner was one of the greatest designers, but his view on cars was different than others. He said that his look was more an art made practical. He was mainly known for his more forward look between 1955 and 1963. It gave his designs that look because he lowered the roofline and created a wedge-like shape, long hood and short deck. Took a boxy car design into a more aerodynamic design. And for these models, he would use wind tunnels to help his design. he would make them. It would help him make the right decisions for his tail fins and what would work best for the car. Action went from a boxy look to an aerodynamic Plymouth, Valiant, and Fury. Into the 1970s and 90s, they took more of a turn to provide for more safety, and they wanted to fix flaws from before. Sometimes there was some designs that they would look back at that they previously made. Manufacturers focused on these designs, and they took a turn for more practical, and they tried to solve problems and flaws from the past designs they had, which caused for a more boxy, uninspired look. They try to make a car more practical. Once manufacturers got over that hump of having to solve all the problems from the past, they were able to meet the safety standards for cars while still being able to make them aesthetically pleasing. Curves, contours, and all.
If you look at cars from the 1970s and cars from the 1990s, there's really one big difference in their designs. The ones from the 70s are boxy, and the ones from the 90s are curvy. For some car models, you can even tell the exact year when that change happened. Just look at this commercial for the Buick LeSabre, showing the 1991 model, and then the 1992 model.
The 1992 LeSabre.
See the curves? Let's watch that again. 91 is boxy, sharp edges. 92, smooth and round. And since then, cars have become curvier and curvier. So how did this happen? When manufacturers started making curvy cars in the 90s, it wasn't a totally new concept. Back in the 1930s, streamliners like this Chrysler Airflow used a sleek design to reduce wind resistance. But as the 50s and 60s rolled around, American streamliners stopped selling well. They were outsold by bigger, boxier cars. And gas prices were on a fairly steady decline at this point, so streamlining for fuel efficiency was less of a concern. Well into the 1970s, just about every car made in America had sharp edges and very few curves. They were basically designed as a series of three boxes: the hood, the cabin, and the trunk. And that model worked really well in the US market. But in Europe, fuel was always more expensive. In the 60s, a gallon of gas in France cost a whopping 73.1 cents, while it was just 31 cents in the US. So European designers started experimenting with more aerodynamic designs to help cars move more easily, so they waste less gas. Automakers like Porsche and BMW and Audi and Mercedes-Benz, they all started rolling out car models that had curved exteriors. And eventually, American automakers started to copy the European aerodynamic look to try to attract upscale customers. The mass market was a different picture. In Europe, a designer named Uwe Bonsen was the first person to push for a curved design for the average driver, and he did that with the 1982 Ford Sierra. It was curvier than any car in its class at the time, but critics just laughed at it, and it didn't sell very well at first. It was nicknamed the Jelly Mold because of how much it looked like the kind of circular shape you'd make Jell-O with. But one of the designers from that European Ford design team, this guy, Jack Telnack, took over the US design team in 1980. American gas prices at this point were skyrocketing due to conflict in the Middle East, so Telnack brought wind tunnel testing into the design process. He first did that with the 1983 Ford Thunderbird, but the real breakthrough came a few years later. If you look at cars from the 1970s,
As Uwe Bonsen pushed for a curvy look, and many didn't like his design, Jack Telnack took over to make something better. As gas prices were rising, he wanted to make something more efficient, while still keeping the curved look to it. As a result of
The result was the groundbreaking 1986 Ford Taurus.
It might not look that groundbreaking now, but this style was revolutionary at the time. It was a mass-market car with curvy edges, and people liked it.
Taurus, now a North American car with the shape and the feel we've never seen before. Taurus.
They used it in RoboCop as the car of the future. In and the sales basically saved Ford, which had really been struggling at the time. And it inspired a whole wave of copycat curvy cars. And streamlining became even more popular because manufacturers were facing new fuel economy regulations in the US. Starting in 1978, the average fuel efficiency of each manufacturer's passenger cars had to meet higher and higher levels. According to one Ford designer, aerodynamic design was a much more affordable way to boost efficiency than doing engineering work under the hood. The rise of computer modeling in the 80s also made it easier for car makers to design and manufacture curved lines. All these years later, the influence on today's cars is pretty clear. Even the models that we criticize for being ridiculously boxy these days, like the Scion XB, are actually really round. And if our modern day sci-fi movies have anything to say about it, that won't be changing anytime soon.
Now to our modern designs. They have gone from making something to just transporting people and just putting parts together to go into something completely changed from the very beginning. They now go to make something, care about every little part and make it beautiful. They care about every little car, starting from the materials that the car uses and the shape they build the car to maximize the car's efficiency, while still trying to keep the cars looking similar from the same model car. As this BMW tries to keep the same face of the car to it. Part of what we're trying to do with our new generation cars is to introduce more variation by pulling the models further apart visually, while still retaining a family look. For a sporty car, we want to offer a low and wide grille. The new Z4 and X and 8 series are like this. However, for cars like the X7 and 7 series, it's more about luxury and presence, so we made the grills more vertical, while they're still maintaining the same BMW look to it. And same for this McLaren Senna. The car parts have started to become a big part in this production. For this car, every little part of it has been used to maximize its efficiency. They try to focus on the best performance of the car, adding every little part and best parts. Now manufacturers have money and space to be able to have the money and space to be able to make some of the best looking cars. They use materials that are stronger and better for the car. Carbon fiber has become a big thing for cars. It's durability and lightweight material, but it's also super expensive to use, so it's hard to get. We started from just putting a steam engine on a chassis and giving people some other sort of transportation. Design have gone as far from horse-drawn carriages made from mostly wood with some metal, and few futuristic looking designs, with each part helping the car's performance in some way. Designs continue to progress over time and become more and more complex. And on my career path, I chose I want to be an auto body technician, and for this it looks like from an auto body technician pretty much is from fixing anything that needs to be fixed in a car. They carry out a range of repairs from hammering out minor dents in windshields to replacing windshields to complete rebuilds and paint jobs. When not repairing collision damage, technicians work on body customization or minor repairs, such as buffing out scratches or corrosion damage. And for this, once I get into working as an auto body technician, I want to go on commission, which is pretty much like you have set jobs that you have to do, and you have to like clock in and out of those jobs. And if you finish it it'll be like a 4-hour project that they'll set on you. And then if you finish it in say 2 hours, they'll still pay you the 4 hours, and like just kind of to maximize the amount of money I could get. And for my interview, I also was able to interview Randy Davis, and I was able to learn about his life, growing up working on cars and being able to build one himself and race it. It was really cool, him being able to tell me his stories, getting me more and more interested in working on cars. And I plan to take a gap year, and then I'll attend either American River College or Merced College, where I will earn my certificate to be an auto body technician. And yeah, thank you.
Does anyone have a question for Ulyses?
I do.
Yeah.
Do you prefer the modern designs or older designs better?
Honestly, say modern designs, honestly. But some also older designs are pretty cool. But like, definitely the modern designs. Yeah, Jade?
What span, like what year did you have the most interest in researching? Like what
Yes,
interested
sir.
you
Yeah.
more?
Probably definitely like from World War II to like the 1990s, from that year. Because a lot happened from World War II to over, so yeah, definitely. Any more questions?
Why do you pick this career, you know? What do you like about it?
I liked it because ever since I was small, I liked taking parts, like even from my toys, you know. I like taking them apart and then putting them back together. And then I've always just been interested in working on cars.
Right, excellent.
Yeah.
What do you think is the best car brand?
That's hard. I feel like they're all good in their own way. But like me, I kind of like Hondas because that's kind of like the car I don't want to get. But like, yeah, I feel like they're all good in there. Depends on like kind of the price range that you're kind of looking for because yeah, they're all pretty good. So, yeah.
All right, excellent job, Ulyses. Okay, tomorrow we will have Jade and Charles, so please join us back at 1:30 tomorrow.